right. There's a bunch of seats up here in the front. Okay, well, welcome to the DML Conference Ignite event. We are very excited that you're all here today supporting our wonderful speakers. My name is Tara Brown, and I'm the Tech Director with the DML Research Hub. Before we kick things off, yay! Yay, tech. Before we kick things off, I have a special announcement from our Communication Director, Jeff Brazil, and it's related to Twitter and spam. So I heard that there's some spam issues going on, and John Bariloni informed me that us trending on Twitter has nothing to do with the spam. In fact, I think I insulted him when I asked that question. The note is, we encourage people to keep reporting spam tweets, and at DML Conference, just tweeted a link that'll make it a lot easier to follow along with the conference. Okay? So thank you, everyone. Before we kick off the actual event with our speakers, I would like to ask Joe Kahn to come up here. He's got something to say. And there's a slide, too.
So, hello. So I really want to thank you, Tara, for this, to have a moment to just share this with you. It's about money. I know that helps maybe a little, but the good news for us is that the Spencer Foundation announced yesterday a new request for proposals for between $100,000 and $400,000 for 2-year grants. The grants would be of $100,000 to $400,000 for people interested in developing measures of the quality of civic and political engagement. And in the RFP, they express a specific interest in the ways in which digital media may be changing the quality of young people's civic and political engagement, and an interest in the ways in which digital media could help through creating games or simulations or scraping from data or any of that. Using digital media could give us ways to assess in powerful ways the quality of young people's civic and political engagement. So it's a thing that if anyone is interested in it, I'll be in the Venetian room between 8 and 8:45 tomorrow morning. Bring a cup of coffee, and I'd be happy to share more information about it then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. All right. Okay. When I was asked to MC the Ignite event tonight and Saturday night, I reached out to Brady Forrest, who actually started these events back in 2006 with Bree Pettis. And I said, hey, I need some pro tips on how to MC one of these things. And he said, well, you need to be funny because you need to warm up the audience. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm not very funny at all, so what am I going to do? And then just to make it worse, I found out that Alex Halliday, who has MC'd this event previously, was a stand-up comedian. And so I thought, okay, why did they pick me? But then, when some friends here at the DML conference started bugging me and asking me if I had a bunch of jokes, I paused and I thought, I'm Canadian. All I have to do is emphasize my oots and my boots, and, I'm bound to get a few chuckles. And if that doesn't work, there's beer at the Saturday night Ignite events. So either way, I think we'll be okay. So I mentioned the Ignite event started in 2006, and they're an ongoing series of speedy presentations. They've been held in over 100 cities. The motto for the Ignite events is enlighten us, but make it quick. The speakers are given 20 slides, 5 minutes with 20 slides, and they auto-advance every 15 seconds. So in other words, this is not for the long-form crowd. Two of the ingredients that are really important are that you're kind of geeky and you have a sense of humor. In fact, that was on the application. How do you judge your humor? And I think all the speakers thought they're pretty funny. So I think we're in for some lulls tonight. And I feel like just yesterday that I was giving some pro tips to our first speaker on how to tweet. And I noticed today that he was live tweeting the keynote. And here he is about to give the first Ignite talk. So please welcome Sam Dyson of Hive Chicago. We're inviting him to not only the Geek Club, but to the stage. So give me a moment while I figure out how to...
Microphone check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. I will stand here awkwardly until the actual presentation begins. But it's not the presentation. Hi everybody. I'm Sam Dyson, director of the Hive Chicago Learning Network. What up? So I'd like to start this talk where Connie Yao began her talk a couple weeks ago at the Reconnecting Learning Summit, where she said our work begins with complex problems. There's complexity on every level of our work. Learning itself is complex. It's social, interactive. It's both public and private. It's effortful, and it can be messy. And the root of it is that inviting people to learn and figuring out what to do when they actually accept your invitation involves some complexity. And I've noticed a pattern that in response to the complexity, we actually sort of miss a moment in the process. That is, we recognize that there is a symptom, but we don't know what the problem is. And we rush like crazy people toward the solution without fully clearly understanding the problem. In fact, it's worse than that many of the problems we're chasing after are actually mysteries. Problems are those things that you can look at and think about what the solution might look like. Mysteries, we can only stare at and wonder. Unfortunately, under the pressure of accountability and results, when you actually try to understand root causes of these symptoms, you're often dismissed as getting into the weeds. Well, when I stepped from the weeds in the DML community a couple years ago, it was like walking into Willy Wonka's Candyland, full of opportunity and resources that were all designed to meet this kind of complexity. And the tastiest morsel that I found in the DML buffet was not a program or prescription, but in fact, a shared vision for what learning could look like. Among the other resources in the DML buffet are Hive learning networks, sweet and savory places to explore, create, and share. So what is a Hive learning network? Getting there, don't rush me. Learning networks are incubators of innovation. They're places where educators find resources for generating new solutions to old problems. They're also communities of organizations and educators, youth who come together to create a city as a classroom where all learning counts. And because innovation matters to us, they're also places where we accept taking risks and sharing what you learn. When you combine risk-taking with incubation, sometimes you get a sweet little baby chick, and sometimes you get a deformed mistake. It's okay. We learn from it all. And at the foundation of these learning networks are human relationships. So when good ideas do emerge, they spread virally from person to person. That means that taken together, these learning networks become places where we're getting better at getting better. We're not just factories producing experiences for young people. We're actually laboratories refining how those experiences are produced. This emboldens us as a community to face complexity head on. Love the baby. These networks are full of people who want to work on hard problems that are too difficult for them to work on alone. When I was a teacher, by contrast, and this is a picture of me, I rarely felt empowered to connect to the 20,000 other teachers working alongside of me outside of our building. But the fact is, whether you're working in a network context or in a classroom context, inviting people to learn is both hard and important, and it's time that we start respecting the complexity of our work. It's time that more of our mysteries level up to the status of problems. And we need to create more opportunities for diverse communities to make more mysteries into problems, more problems into compelling challenges, and more challenges into solutions. And that's what a learning network can do. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. Is that my title slide? Well, my name's Matt, and I am a sociologist, so I'm probably not going to be very funny for those of you that... Oh, can you guys hear me okay? Okay, cool. So the title of my talk is Code Switching Digital Natives and Digital Immigrants at School, and it's based on research that I've done in 3 middle schools that vary by race and class. And I'll be talking about these 3 terms, but the first 2 I'm going to start with are digital native and digital immigrant. So we typically know digital native to refer to this idea that young people are somehow naturally gifted at technology, and that older generations are just simply always falling behind. They're just not as skilled as these digital natives. But we know that it's a bit more complicated than that. We know that educators see that not all kids are actually equally skilled when it comes to technology. And tech researchers see, too, that older generations are adopting certain tech platforms at rates faster than ever before. And I'm sure anthropologists in the room cringe when they hear these terms native and immigrant thrown around, because researchers have used these terms to create boundaries between the people they study, and it creates complicated power dynamics. But in my dissertation, which looks at these 3 schools that I mentioned, I find that actually these terms are alive and well in schools. Teachers use them regularly to make sense of the relationships that they have with their students. And one teacher put it really well to me, I thought, and it represented kind of teachers at 2 of my schools. And she goes, Matt, you know, these kids can text, but they can't type in MLA format. And I realized that teachers at 2 of these schools, they see kids texting and Facebook messaging, all as kind of frivolous activities that are not really learning relevant. And more than that, they use this as a way to see themselves as legitimate actors, even in the face of perhaps their own lack of fear about their own technological expertise. But this wasn't the only perspective that I saw in schools. I have another school which serves primarily minority youth, and sociologists like myself would paint a pretty grim outlook for this school. We would not really expect that there would be a lot of learning activity happening there based on the literature. But when I got there, I saw that the school was serving tons of technology. They were using Google Docs for learning, MIT's Scratch interface for computer programming and design, all sorts of stuff. And so despite all of this academic literature in sociology, I saw that sociology actually kind of failed me. It didn't well predict what I was seeing in this school. And so why do we find this to be different? And the clue that I got, and this is a first hot tip to school ethnographers, is to go to faculty lounges, because you'll always get the real scoop there with all the gossip that happens there. And I was in between appointments with teachers, and this teacher came up to me, and she goes, Matt, you know what it is? These kids, they're so skilled at Facebook and texting and whatever, but it's our job as educators to teach these kids how to code switch, how to translate their skills to school. And I was just having this moment where I was like, what? Code switching? I know that from the literature that typically refer to this idea that minority youth have a language they speak with their peers and family, but then when they have to learn a whole different language when they go to school and learn that language. And I realized actually that code switching is a metaphor for a teaching strategy. It acknowledges that kids have their own valuable skills that they develop from hanging out online with peers, but also that schools are their own places with sets of rules. And code switching in this way positions teachers as translators between peer cultures and the technologies that they use and the educational institution. So hot tip number 2. You can read all of the literature, academic literature in the world, and still be surprised by what you find when you go in the field. The real story is often obtained when you talk to the very people that you're studying. And one of the lessons that I learned from this is actually that schools are often really scary places. And schools have their own rules, their own etiquette, their own language. And research is right in that traditionally underserved youth just aren't as well positioned to meet these expectations as are youth from better circumstances. And so we may hate terms like digital native and digital immigrant, but they're actually really helpful when you talk to teachers and realize that it represents the foreignness between youth spheres of pure culture and technology use and school. But this code switching frame actually positions teachers not as top-down authorities, but rather as bridges between young people and the technologies they use and the schools they enter. And in this way, teachers have shown me how we can envision student skills with technology not as risks for learning, but rather as opportunities. Thank you.
This is something I wrote about museums, but it's really about learning. In the age of sail, we once were rooted. For 5,000 years it constituted a world-shaping, epoch-making, record-breaking human being technology. This cannot be disputed. From the time of the pharaohs to the first steamboats, if you wanted to move some goods, some goats, send a scientific treatise about the sexual life of moats, take your kids on a round-the-world vacation, fight a war against a foreign nation, to move anything across the seas, your only hope was for a sail upon a boat upon the breeze. Only a fool would row, could bear to go that slow if they were in the know. Now, don't get me wrong. I imagine a case where a captain of reason could, without treason, reason rowing over breezin'. I sometimes prefer a book in my hands to bits on a screen. It seems a good book can help my mind dream. And the slow, dirty gravel of the path less traveled seems not to unravel the work of the travel, but gives a sense of joy to a boy and a girl with nowhere to go and time to get gone. But when the task that's at hand, like yours, is so grand, and the mission your dishin' has frishin', when you're jizzin', why row? Why go slow? You must stand. 'Cause today, here's our planet, a hot, packed piece of granite. World's on fire and we fan it. It's in trouble. We must jam it. We must man and woman it, not spam it with old tools that waste time, lame deeds that don't rhyme. Why wield a small hammer when you can jammer with a rammer? Why have a museum? So you can see 'em, be 'em, getting foolish pride from taking small strides. Your inside museum guides given tiny little rides down hoity-toity halls of art-filled walls and empty spaces filled with empty cases and empty stories about the evolution of the races, while the masses, the brilliant masses, all the classes, wait outside. That's not a museum. That's a mausoleum. Though I do love art. It fills the cart in the quickie mart of my happy heart. The coffee table babble ain't no fable. Dance and music make me stable. To a soul beyond the pale, there's nothing finer than a Science Center model whale. But if the whale don't scale, it's a planetary fail. We must scale. We can scale. We can move new ideas across the seas. It's the age of scale. Because it's not just a rumor that the consumer ain't no dumb boomer with no hands, heart, or sense of humor. She's a smart, caring soul. She's got friends. They can roll 1 trillion hours a year of civic action surplus on your ass. Shirky told me this is so. Take it. Go. No longer passive. Public hands, hearts, and voices now are massive. Public action makes old school broadcast reaction a distraction to this powerful new faction. 6 billion people connected on the web. They'll tag your bits, hit your hits, grind your zits, grind your grits, pop your zits, give you fits, and take you to the Ritz. Solve your problems, make them theirs. Take away 1,000 planetary cares. Cure your ulcer, hack your culture. Your museum should be theirs for the taken. You exist to maximize their making. Be assured that old boy taboos they are a-breakin'. A fine new recipe they're delighted to be bakin'. They are insane in the brain with the freedom and power of Creative Commons and the public domain. Remixing a fresh refrain with their friends, a new universe, a new zooniverse. It's the opposite of holding still or moving in reverse. It's perverse how they rehearse the inverse of the ancient 20th century manager's chapter and verse about who does the work, who has a say, and who gets to just walk along silent behind the corporate content hearse. Flickr, it reached 12 billion culture-richer pictures, OpenStreetMaps and Ushahidi, and if my grandma could only see me use 20 million CC0 records on Europeana to see, be, and make a vibrant culture. Like a culturo-scientific new media data mixer mulcher, a grower, reader, seeder, super dynamic knowledge breeder beater who brings good things to Wikipedia. That wiki really loves to show the people what they love to know about the Himalayan snow, Madonna's brand new bow, Homer Simpson's dough. Where else are you going to get that, bro? A museum? I don't think so. So, jack the museum. We really need to make it sail, make it scale, so the culture continues to feed you. Do it now. Don't waste time working back in stagnant, small scale, small vision times. Do the museum. Thank you.
I'm not rhyming. I wish I was. Also, I'm spearheading the holding notes while holding a mic. So, hi, I'm Jackie. I'm talking about STEM and youth, and this talk is inspired by my daily interactions with teens in an informal learning space. So I titled this talk, Tips for Combating the Lamification of STEM, because we're doing it wrong. We're not selling the cool factor nor the power of STEM. I was just telling my little sister that's a senior in high school that I was doing a talk on STEM, and I paused and went, you know what STEM is, right? And she goes, yes, oh my God. So the current offenders, you have schools, you have adults, and you have the media. And so recent report in Massachusetts said that test scores are going up, but interest level is going down. Why is that? Kids are looking at STEM like it's another thing on an exam and not something they can benefit from over a long period of time. It's actually quite daunting how much they dread this. And I mean, look at those posters. They're hideous, and young people are simply scarred for life. Nobody wants that. So when I'm talking about adults, I'm talking about me, but I'm also talking about you. We're all guilty of preaching about STEM or talking about the handful of teen millionaires that were self-taught. But by high school, young people are totally disengaged. They're not even listening anymore. And because we're preaching, but also because we're making it sound unobtainable. There are more NBA players than Mark Zuckerberg's. There's too much pressure for the young people, and so they feel like they're not even going to bother trying. Lastly, we have the media. So there's a reason why when you think a programmer, you think a 30-something-year-old living in a basement of their parents' house drinking Mountain Dew. Or when you think of a frumpy nerd girl, you think of a 90s rom-com. The media portrayal is extremely formulaic and limits the range of STEM careers, and also just makes them seem dull, isolated, and unsexy. So that raises the question of what is motivating our kids. It's easy to go ahead and assume that youth are strictly motivated by fame and money, but working with young people, it's clear that while money is important, it's not exactly the driving factor in what pushes them. So what is? I asked and observed a bunch of our young people that I work with on a daily basis, and it's clear that they do things they like and they don't mind being pushed if it's something that they're passionate about. Youth are motivated by passion. They want to own their work and learning and create for more than just a grade. The outcomes of these projects will surprise you as long as they're youth-driven and it's meaningful work, the process will actually prove to be fun, exciting, and creative. And when I mean creative, I'm not just talking about artistic, I'm talking about problem solving, troubleshooting, risk-taking, and challenging assumptions. And we do that a lot at the place I work, the Intel Computer Clubhouse. And the Clubhouse is a design studio for teens, and our point is to get kids excited about learning. Yes, while they're doing projects, they're having fun, but yes, they're learning. And yes, it's engineering. And yeah, maybe math. And technology, and that can look like a lot of different things. For example, a 3D printed cat ring or a texture-based Rubik's Cube for youth that are blind, or a shirt business that incorporates graphic design, sales, and entrepreneurship, or most recently, a sensor-based game that involved loud screeching noises when I went to use my computer. As you can see, youth interest in STEM is not a lost cause. Young people are motivated and excited about STEM when projects, lessons, and anecdotes are relevant and obtainable. Youth want to do things that they know they're interested in and passionate about and can produce great things. So schools and adults and each other, we really need to strive to broaden the conversation and reimagine the opportunities that exist within STEM. Cool careers like sports statisticians or game developers or space roboticists. And we need to be more mindful to give room to explore and to prescribe less. We should also remind ourselves and our young people that negative media messages exist beyond gender and ethnicity. Through arts and creative learning approaches, we can reinvent the look and feel of STEM and the youth we work with and help create safer and more engaging environments and make STEM cool again. Thank you.
Hello. I hope you're all ready for some really fast talking because I'm not sure I am, but we'll go. So this is an image from my favorite spacecraft, Voyager 1, and if you can see that tiny little pale blue speck of a pixel there, that's Earth as seen from about 4 billion miles away. And what I love so much about this image is how it encapsulates how space exploration is often about observation and not necessarily participation. And this relates to my own personal story because in 2008, I was watching a documentary about NASA, and I realized that they weren't really the rocket scientists I had always imagined. They were more space hackers. And so inspired by this, I sent NASA an email saying I was a huge fan of what they were doing, and if they ever needed someone like me, someone without a formal science background, that I was here. Serendipitously, I was able to get a job at NASA from that email, and it completely changed my life and was so amazing. I got to learn so many things. But the most important thing that I learned at NASA was I didn't even need to work at NASA to explore space, and so I left. And I created spacehack.org. And spacehack.org is a directory of ways to participate in space exploration. This is anything people can do with or without a science background to actively contribute to scientific discovery around space exploration. So the types of things that you can do through spacehack.org are things like searching for extraterrestrials, either through radio signals or through projects like the Austrian Space Forum here, where you can actually look in Mars analog-like environments for microbes that we might be able to one day find on Mars if we're ever sent there as humans. Or you might build the next generation of interplanetary ambassadors, maybe not ones that look like Mars Curiosity, maybe they look more like tumbleweeds or something weird. But when I created SpaceHack, I realized that essentially there's all this open science stuff out there, but no one's really doing anything interesting with it. And so born out of that frustration came Science Hack Day. And Science Hack Day is a 48-hour event in which scientists, designers, developers, and all different types of people get together in the same physical space to see what they can rapidly prototype with science in 24 consecutive hours. It's as fast as I'm speaking. But the mission of Science Hack Day is just to get excited and make things with science. And so you can make something silly, something serious, doesn't really matter. So the types of things that come out of Science Hack Days are things like this. This is a lamp that's supposed to light up every time an asteroid passes by the Earth. So in a sense, it's like a near-death lamp. Can freak out your coworkers with it or something. Other weird things that have come out of Science Hack Day have been things like this. This is a typeface someone wanted to create in which all the letters had equal wind drag. And so what you're looking at here is a makeshift wind tunnel, and someone actually recorded the wind drag of each individual letter and weighted each individual letter so that all the letters would have equal wind drag. Other weird hacks have been things like deanacary. This is a cocktail of extracted strawberry DNA, and so it's a completely drinkable cocktail that actually extracts DNA as you're drinking it, but it tastes disgusting. Another weird thing was a group of hackers wanting to experiment with simulating synesthesia, essentially where your senses get crossed. So if you hear something, you might actually see something, or you associate certain colors with certain letters. And so they created this really creepy mask called synesthesia. And essentially what synesthesia does is it simulates a type of synesthesia. They took a bunch of vibrating speakers and they attached it to someone's face. They did this using a GIMP mask, so that's why it's so creepy looking. And they wired it all up to an Arduino and a webcam. So as someone navigates different parts of the room, and different parts of the room are lighter or darker, different parts of your face start vibrating. So you can begin to feel sight in a weird, creepy way. But my favorite story from Science Hack Day is the beard detector, essentially a device someone created to detect when he needed to shave. And so he took a USB microscope, he held it up to his face, he wrote some basic code, and as you can see, it says no beard found, and it tells him when he needs to shave. I thought this was weird, but and I wasn't quite sure what it had to do with science, but sitting in the audience and seeing this demoed was a particle physicist. And when he saw this, he said to himself, wow, it's actually a genius way for how to detect cosmic rays in a cloud chamber. And so following Science Hack Day, this particle physicist wrote this entire proposal for how to detect cosmic rays in a cloud chamber using the original code someone had used to detect if he needed to shave or not. And so this is what I love about hacking and hack days. It's really about creating sparks for future things and future ideas, and anyone can organize their own Science Hack Day. And so to me, when it comes to space exploration, there's a lot of things we could be searching for. We could be searching for exoplanets or extraterrestrials, but to me, it's the search for experimentation that's so incredibly precious, and I think we found it through hacking science. Thank you.
Ooh, this feels like an athletic event. Hi, I'm Christine. I work at Iron USA, and I'm here to talk about digital storytelling and empathy. So I have the incredible job of working with young people around the world from countries with significant Muslim populations. And about a year ago, we organized a series of digital storytelling workshops to provide them training in the skills of storytelling and social media, because we strongly believed that these were vital 21st century skills. But inevitably, I ended up learning something completely unexpected. We brought 25 young people from these 11 countries and territories together from across the Middle East for 1 week in Doha. Having them all in one room in and of itself was a feat, overcoming decades of political and cultural division. But what I did not anticipate was the principles of a high school lunchroom. We had Israelis on one side, we had Palestinians on the other, we had all the Gulf states at one table, and then the Yemeni kid back here hiding behind the pillar. I was terrified. What is going to happen? But on the last day of the workshop, I walk into the dining hall and I see them dragging this giant banquet table across the room, just so that all of them, all 25 of them, could sit together at one table and share a meal together. So what had changed? What made them move away from this self-division and value unity? So several months later, I came home and heard this story on the news about a young girl who had committed suicide after being cyberbullied. And naturally, the country was blaming social media, and I was perplexed. But my brain switched to the stories about my digital storytellers. And I wondered, how can we encourage young people to use technology and digital media in a positive way to elevate their peers and to start to build healthier learning communities? So not being a scientist, I started with what I knew had worked, and that was stories. And come to find out, our brains are literally wired for storytelling. And if we look back about 28,000 years or so, no big deal, we'll see the first evidence of storytelling. In fact, throughout history, stories is something that we have used to create, to define, and to preserve our culture. And there's a reason for that. It's because that's what our brains have taught us to do. So come to find out, science says that when you hear a descriptive story, it activates the right side of your brain, and which ignites your ability for imagination, literally allowing you to step out of yourself and into the experience of another. This is awesome. And this is all because of some nifty thing discovered in the rockin' 90s by some scientists in Italy called neuron mirrors, or mirror neurons, there we go. Mirror neurons. And essentially, when you engage in an activity, the corresponding parts of your brain light up. And what they found was that simply by watching another person enact that activity, or by hearing a descriptive story about that activity, your brain actually lit up in the same way as well. Now, another body of research says that these overlapping networks are what influence our capacity for social interaction. So if we break this down, essentially what they're saying is you hear or watch a story, it ignites this part of your brain, these overlapping networks full of mirror neurons, and that allow for things such as imagination, understanding the other, and social interaction. Well, I thought to myself, gee, this sounds a lot like empathy. And that's because empathy is the ability to imagine ourselves in another's place, understand the other's feelings, desires, actions, etc. But my question was about digital media. So I started looking at today's transmedia landscape, in a place where young people, in fact anybody, including young people, can create. And we know that creating then increases your sense of agency and allows people to participate. We know that participation creates community, and community gives a sense of belonging. These are all characteristics that we want for an ideal learning environment. Throw some stories in there, and what do you get? You get an entire community of empathetic brains. So what happens then if the culture of your classroom and school is based on empathy rather than on division and judgment? So I looked back at our workshops to figure out what we accidentally did right. And what we had done is we broke them into teams, tasked them with the job of telling the story of another teammate, which required them to listen to each other. And in that listening, find value in the other person. Well, we go back to science, and it come to find out that was actually an exercise in some things that researchers call unconditional positive regard, altruism, and the theory of value. So these are things, obviously, that we were promoting without even realizing it. And today, the new hottest 21st century skill is the capacity for empathy because of the strong correlation to positive social change. And not only is this a hot up-and-coming skill that people are looking for, but it's also an answer to one of the questions of this conference. How can empathetic youth voices using technology and media be part of a systemic change in school culture, in our society, and the way that we educate? And my answer, can you guess? Digital storytelling. Thank you.
So my name is Jane Park. I work for Creative Commons, and I've been working there for over 6 years. And I'm going to talk to you about the School of Open, a project I manage. So because I don't know the meaning of the word vacation, I decided to go on vacation to Kenya and Tanzania last year for my 2 weeks. And when I came back, I took a long, hot shower, and I felt extremely guilty for doing so after. There is running water in Kenya, of course, but it doesn't work quite so well all the time, and I had taken quite a few bucket showers on my trip. But while I was there, I had the chance to talk to the volunteers behind the School of Open Kenya initiative. It's an after-high school training program where the volunteers work with students to help them leverage the internet to achieve their goals. And this particular school's goals was to install running water in their school so they wouldn't have to take a trip to the well every day. Amazingly, with the help of a plumber that they found in the Netherlands on Twitter and resources they found online, they were able to build a DIY plumbing system in their school. This is what we talk about when we talk about the power of open and its ability to empower local communities all around the world to do things they might otherwise not be able to do. This is another School of Open initiative in Luxi Island off the rural coast of China. These children are known as left behind children because their parents leave them to work on the mainland. And School of Open volunteers ran a summer program here last year as well, and they taught the kids how to use open educational resources to remix videos. So when it comes to, in both of these cases, School of Open volunteers were helping local communities to solve their local problems by learning about and using open resources and tools. So at this point, you're probably thinking, I've been throwing around the word open a lot. What do you mean exactly when I say the word open? Well, let's take this image metaphorically for a second. The door's open, that's an objective truth. But the kid reaching for the door handle can't quite reach it, while the woman walking behind him can. So my point is that there's a lot of free stuff on the internet. But it doesn't really matter if there's all these open movements around them and people on a day-to-day basis can't find them or use them because they don't know that they exist in the first place, and they don't know how to leverage them. So this is where the School of Open comes in. We work to bridge that gap. We work to give that kid a stool so that he can reach that door handle. The School of Open is a community of volunteers from all around the world of all different ages, and they have expertise in everything from copyright law to scientific works. And it's run by two organizations, the Peer-to-Peer University and Creative Commons. P2PU, as you all know, is an active peer learning community, and Creative Commons is a nonprofit that is dedicated to making it easier for others to share and build upon the works of copyright. And this is the School of Open. In addition to the training programs we have in China and Kenya and many other places, we also offer free online courses on topics like copyright for educators. And everything we do runs on a peer learning model. So what does that mean? That means that we encourage project-based learning, we encourage participatory learning, we want to empower learners to tackle their own problems. We don't want to do that for them. And our network of learners is vast. So Creative Commons alone has over 270 affiliates in over 74 countries. But the important thing to remember is that School of Open is not just Creative Commons, not just P2PU, it is beyond that. It encompasses a wide network of organizations working in the open space, many of which you probably recognize here. Of course, not all of them are officially part of the School of Open, but we are all contributing to the open effort in some way, and we are collaborating with these organizations. So you might be interested to know that the original idea for the School of Open started with a much more niche problem. The fact that copyright was just too confusing for the average educator to decipher, much less the average person. So P2PU decided to start the Copyright for Educators courses in 2009, and since then we've expanded our offerings. So this is Open Advocate David Wiley's course on openness in education, and it's now on P2PU, part of School of Open, and anyone can take it at any time at their own pace. This is another course called Teach Someone Something with Open Content. This helps people find, use, and teach with open resources online. And we have many, so this is what you're going to do. If you remember one thing from this talk, remember our web address. It's schoolofopen.org. All the information on this slide and everything I talked about is on there. You can also email me directly at janepark@creativecommons.org if you want to start a School of Open project in your region. And because I work for Creative Commons, I cannot end this talk without saying that this slide deck is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution License, which means that you can reuse, remix, and redistribute it even for commercial purposes as long as you give credit to Creative Commons. And of course, this slide deck itself is a remix. I found all of the images online under Creative Commons licenses. These are the attributions for those photos. And I didn't have to ask for permission because permission was already granted.
Hi, my name is Taos Glickman. I'm a doctoral student at UMass Amherst, and today I'm going to ask a very probing question. Would the Breakfast Club be cyberbullies today? I'm going to be looking at the bullying and victim stereotypes in teen film and television, focused on these 5 iconic cliches. So if we think about traditional bullying, we're often thinking about physical, verbal, and relational. When we get to cyberbullying, we're thinking about issues of communication and information technologies. If we think about, as we go along into what we're looking at, I'm looking at the intersection between where did the screen media from film and TV intersect in the screen issue, based on these kind of 5 common values from the Breakfast Club. The criminal, the nerd, the jock, basket case, and the princess. Now, Rebel Without a Cause is kind of seen as the first film to kind of have this sort of authentic teen film genre, focusing on contemporary set, authentic feel for the teens. I will not be talking about vampires. So what I'm focusing on here is issues of race, class, gender, and sexuality. But because this is historical, there's more of a focus on class and gender, but these things intersect nonetheless. Now, in terms of criminals and nerds, the criminal tends to be the bully, and the nerd the victim, but this can change due to issues of class and gender and sexuality, which we'll see here. So if we look at Rebel Without a Cause, you have a set of camaraderie where you typically would have a bully-victim relationship. They're sharing a similar middle class, as well as confusions over gender, And there's also some coded kind of 1950s homosexuality going on here, so they have a kinship. If we look at something like Welcome to the Dollhouse, we have this mixed gender kind of weird romantic relationship that tends to happen where the bully and the victim have some sort of romantic twist going on here. And they're typically coded as lower class, which you can see here with Degrassi. So when it's mixed gender, we have this sort of lower class criminal having a romantic relationship with their original intended kind of victim nerd. But when you're dealing with a single gender, there's more of that bully nerd kind of dynamic. So again, the Breakfast Club helps us out here. If it's sort of a mixed gender, we have a sort of weird bully victim romantic relationship. But when we're dealing with single gender, there's still this issue of the bully victim issues that can't be resolved as happily. So in terms of jocks, the 80s love images of sort of the bully jock, kind of very prevalent. But if you look and think about issues like class, these kind of break down as well. So when you think about, the key I like to talk about is sort of the jock transformation. And this is also seen in the Breakfast Club. Usually coded as middle class, they can then kind of be transformed from a would-be bully into like a nice, happy guy that we can date and have a good time with. Usually coded as sort of middle class. When you're dealing with lower class, working class individuals, you still have this jock transformation, but it's more subtle and kind of takes into account kind of the issues with race and class that go along with this. But then kind of seeing a way that these kind of supposed bullies can kind of be better guys. And basically in 2 hours, they have this great sensitivity transformation. So they're able to kind of escape the whole bullying issue in some ways there. Now, if we take a look at the next batch, which is the Princess in the Basket case, we're also talking about a transformation, but a lot of this has to do with sort of the gender identity that's going on here. If you look at, to think about these issues with the Princess in the Basket case, you're going to think about Heather's is an interesting example where you have the princess as the bully, the basket case as a victim, but here in Heather's, the princess bully actually becomes a basket case and kills all the other princesses. We kind of have a bully situation there. Something like Mean Girls is a little bit softer where we don't have to kill all the princesses, but again, we kind of come to terms with these issues of sort of our differences in gender and sexuality. It's kind of a happier take on that whole dichotomy, but again, there's this issue of transformation. Something like Pretty Little Liars is interesting. These girls would normally be considered sort of the princess mean girls, but because there's a meaner girl, they're kind of the basket cases because this girl is so much more of a bully than they are. So they're kind of able to escape that issue there. So basically, when we think about gender, we're talking about this transformation for the princess in the basket case. And again, Breakfast Club is really good at showing us that. So if we want to answer the question, unfortunately, I think the Breakfast Club would be cyberbullies, but they would also be victims too. If you think about, now we're talking about cyberbullying as a screen issue, we also want to think about how screen media affects that as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Debra Kerr from Youth Muse in Chicago. I'm an affiliate of the Hive Chicago. Hive? Okay. All right. Americans said, I lead a green-friendly lifestyle. Then when asked how they're supporting that lifestyle, what did they say? No, they didn't say recycling. I will. Okay. What else did they say? This is what they said. Okay, so what are you doing to support a green-friendly lifestyle? Here's what they said. They said, nothing. They said nothing. I'm leading a green-friendly lifestyle, but I'm doing nothing, or I'm doing I don't know. So what does this mean for us? The public wants recommended action. Who here is from a zoo, aquarium, museum, garden? Okay, they specifically want action from you. They want to know what they should do from you. They want you to tell them. Americans see themselves as good guys, but they don't know what to do. So for more information on this research, please check out theoceanproject.org. Which age level has the highest level of concern, is most open to new information, and has the most confidence in their ability to make a difference? Which age level? 18. The Americans said 18 to 25. So what does this mean to us? It means that we are actually reaching out to the right audience. Not only have your youth be in programs, have them develop programs, because we are focused on the right audience and youth need to be giving those messages. Okay, which ocean did Americans say is the healthiest? Pacific, Atlantic, or Indian? Pacific. Why? What? No, not because it's the biggest. They said the Atlantic and the Pacific are the healthiest because they touch the United States. Okay? So, we are proud to be American. What does this mean for us? Keep your message local. Some of you may remember the Don't Mess with Texas anti-littering campaign as one of the most successful ever. The most impactful messages touch on someone or someplace that means something to your audience. Keep that in mind. The Ocean Project asked the public if they agreed that protecting the ocean should be a priority. During the 2010 Gulf oil spill, the response went way up in support of that, but as soon as the crisis ended, the response began to decline almost immediately. What does that mean for us? Don't wait until the crisis happens to get your message ready. There's an opportunity when the crisis happens. There's an urgency to convey. Get your message ready. Start planning your message right now. In any audience, there will be 3 types: the congregation, the choir, and the non-believers. The good news is that the big group is the congregation, ready to hear our message if we have something to say to them. First, skip the choir. They already believe, and you can't move the needle with them. Here's the really good news. You get to skip the non-believer too. You probably can't change their mind. What does this mean for us? Spend your time in the congregation. That's where you can make the most impact with your message, right? Have your young people talk to the congregation. When I tell teens this, they're so relieved they don't have to convince that non-believer. Okay, the most important thing I want to say today is, as humans, we instinctively believe that learning leads to caring, which leads to action, right? But in fact, that's not how it works. Knowledge and action are not connected, okay? We have to make action happen first. How can we do that? Invite your friends. Right, that's my daughter saying invite your friends. Invite your friends. Andrea said, I put the camera in the teens' hands before they even tell them how to use it, right? Get them started before you start teaching them. This is a tough concept for teens to get. They still want to educate, but it works great in practice. Here, I'm Unique asks peers to sign a pledge to take action on the spot. So does this all work? Ocean Project ran an ad in not so environmentally friendly Houston, made it local, made it actionable, talked about an animal that people care about, and when they did the campaign, they found that awareness went up. People thought the ocean is affected by the actions of people, and even 1 year later, they were able to maintain that awareness. So use these ideas to build your message. Okay, basically what I'm getting the kids to say is
we're going to have fun. Fun. It's going to be fun.
That's how you get people to act.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. How are you? Good. Alrighty, so today I'm going to be talking about improvisational theater and virtual exchanges. We've got your back. And what I want to know first is, do you have my back here today? All right. Okay. So the drawing that you're about to see is an asynchronous example of an improvisation that I and my staff did. I drew the first line, my friend Katie drew the second line, Patricia drew the third line, and Jenren drew the fourth line. It's one contiguous panel, that's one drawing that goes almost all the way through this. But meanwhile, what I'm going to ask you to do, because it'll take a little bit, is to stand up but leave your laptops and your phones on your chair. And I'm going to continue talking while you do that. All right? When people think about improv, they think, oh, it's all about being funny. But I would say that it's really all about teamwork, and it's all about having your back. You stand there on the stage by yourself, and you say something, and you're vulnerable. and you're waiting for somebody to come and help you out. So we're going to start with doing an improv exercise all together that's called Alien, Cow, Tiger. Are you ready? Okay. First, we're going to practice being aliens. So if you can put your hands up like this and go beep, 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 beep. I think you need to do that again. Beep, 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 beep. Now we're going to be cows. Are you ready? Moo. Moo. Good. And now we're going to be tigers. Roar. Roar. Okay. So I want you to choose which of these you are. And on the count of 3, everybody be whatever they are. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Roar. All right. Now our job, incredibly quickly, is to try 3 times to see if by watching the cues all around us, we can end up all being the same thing. All right? I think we can do it. Here we go. Ready? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Roar. Okay. All right. I see this trending a certain way. Ready? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Beep 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 beep. All right. I think we got a few non-believers in the audience, but the choir is with me. Let's see if we can try one more time. 1, 2, 3. Beep 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 beep. All right. I think I'm going to give up at that point, but thank you very much, and please have a seat. So this is an example of a principle in improv which is called chivalry, which is when you give up your own wish to be something for the team. Usually it takes longer than 90 seconds in order to achieve, but I wanted to give it a try. Another principle that we use often is called agreement, which is, you may have heard as yes and because, which is that when you say something, you say, for example, oh, there's an alien at the DML conference. Your teammate helps you out by saying, yes, there's an alien, and the alien is there really hoping to catch up with his old colleague, the cow. And you say, yes, because the alien, the cow, and the tiger all have a lot to teach each other, for example. Only you would be sillier than that. So the question then, I think, is what does all of this have to do with virtual exchange? Exchange programs are, I think, by definition, something where you are vulnerable. When you're in a cross-cultural situation, you're vulnerable to what the other person will think, to all of the misconceptions that might happen, and you also are, that's what that is. And so a virtual exchange is a yes and because of that, in that you're saying, yes, we can scale this, yes, we can also take advantage of the new technologies, and we'll have each other's backs, because when you're in an exchange program, you also have each other's backs, and there's that, and thank you very, very much, because I have about 10 seconds left. So. Thank you.
Just trying to avoid the Jennifer Lawrence moment, so I'm here. My name is Yasmin Kafai. I'm from the University of Pennsylvania, and you gave up 15 seconds. So I'm actually a faculty in a graduate school of education, and I also have an appointment in the Department of Computer Science. And it's a very interesting experience when you look at the faces there. The faces in education are definitely different from the ones in computing. And so my talk today is about changing the face of computing, so one stitch at a time, because there is an old saying which goes, one stitch at a time may save you 9 in the future. And in the area of digital literacy and computing education, we really haven't done our stitches to kind of save the 9 in time, because more than, even the girls are 1/2 of the AP takers, only 18% are actually taking the AP computer science exam. And if this isn't bad, the recent data actually shows that there are some states here in US where no student actually has taken the exam. And you may think the AP exam is really not that important, but I mean, it shows us something very problematic that we need to do. And so there's several efforts underway. I mean, the Code.org had over 27 million people actually give a taste of programming. There's Scratch, there's different initiatives like Black Girls in Code. But what I want to talk today about is something which has escaped our attention. And those are the competitions which name like Top Coder, Code War, Sprint Code. And even K-12 has now its own competition with the National STEM Video Game Challenge. And it looks like these competitions are open to all. But really are there? If you look at robotics competitions, local and national teams across the nation compete, but actually very few girls are there. So competitions are really, while everybody can join, the women are not coming. Another example of a competition are hackathons, where you go, not spend a month, but 48 hours on making something. You don't sleep, you don't shower, you see no sunshine. And Penn actually runs the nation's largest hackathon with 1,200 coders twice a year. But the people who are not coming are the women. So when we looked at the data, only 15% of the participants are girls. So we thought, how can we change this? So we decided to create a special event in Penn Apps called Stitch Fest, built on quilting circles and not competitions, and having people kind of design software variables rather than just applications. And we decided to make it around the theme of wear and care, using electronic textiles which allow you to put the computation right into your jackets, the things you wear. And then we also wanted to have people kind of share things. So in the hack boxes with all the electronics which participants got, we gave them some parts, but others we distributed and asked them to trade and share. So just 3 weeks ago, it's not that long, we actually had the first Stitch Fest, and over 44 students came right on Valentine's Day to share their love of programming. And they all engineered code and stitched and produced something. So let's look at a few examples what people actually made. This is a kind of application around the popular Flappy Bird things, and so you now use your arms with your variables to kind of guide the birds through all the obstacles. And then there is HashStream, which is a digital badge which allows you to enter a hashtag and then stream all the Twitter content. And so rather than to have a pin which doesn't change its message, your slogan essentially can become an ongoing conversation. And then we also had guys, believe it or not, who came and were willing to sue and made a messenger bag which turns your daily commute essentially into a profit, because people can sign up for you to kind of take things, deliver them, and then you can kind of get paid for it. Many other things were made. Baby clothes which measure temperature, music sleeves, and they all look different than the big winner of Penn Apps, which was a homework machine that solved your math problems in handwriting. So, but the more important message is that we were able to double the number of women just with this very simple intervention of kind of shifting the focus of what was being designed during the hackathon. And I think that's a really important message, because computing and fashion actually belong together. Over 100 years ago, Ada Lovelace already wrote the first program for jacquard looms, and she probably wrote also the most beautiful sentence to ever link computing and fashion. We may most aptly say that the jacquard loom, that the analytical engine weaves algebraic pattern like the jacquard loom, leaves, and flowers. So I suggest, I mean, game design and robotics and all of this is great, but we also need to think about creating new communities which send messages, textiles and all kinds, that, I mean, things can change and the faces of computing can change one stitch at a time. Yeah.
All right, I'm the last Engage presentation, I suppose. And my name is Constance. I do video games, and this is my first DML. And I'm here to talk about an idea that's not only a good idea, but isn't even my own. And it's a corporation for public games. So this isn't just a rant. This is actually a call to arms. I'm going to task everyone with doing something. Now, it's not my idea. Back in 2006, David Rajewski at the Wilson Foundation wrote an article on the need for a corporation for public gaming in our space. And when I called him to see if I could put his picture up on a slide, he laughed and called it the idea that would not die. Let's go back in history about the formation of the Corporation for Public Gaming itself. Go back far enough and you have an incoming new, in 1961, FCC chairman called TV a vast wasteland. Now, he wasn't anti-TV. He said when it was good, it was great. But he actually was complaining about the poor quality of TV that was out at that time. Flash forward by 1967, you have LBJ signing the Public Broadcasting Act, which in fact put in place the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which has many functions, but four main ones are distribution of resources, system support, doing some early research on, in this case, television in the classroom. And from that, in 1969, you saw PBS come out, NPR in 1970, and the support of other independent minority stations, because that's part of the mission of public media. Questions? What happened downstream? Well, it wasn't just that they formed this sort of public media entity. It actually kicked off shows like Sesame Street. So the output of media turned into being transformational. After Sesame Street came out, there was very little market at the time. And from that, you now see an incredible sort of 1,000 flowers blooming of media coming around education and other science shows, etc. So what has happened is downstream from the creation of a CPB happened a media effect that was profound. In fact, CPB not only took on its literal functions, but it became a brand, and I would argue it created a market. Now, what do I mean about that? Let's go back. When CPB was formed, there was a great potential market, what you would call a blue ocean market, right? The idea that you could have television that was educational, that it could thrive, but no one had actually succeeded in this space whatsoever. So that's what we mean by a blue ocean market. In games, we're in a similar moment. But you also had a failure of philanthropy. At the time, the Ford Foundation was pouring money into what they called the National Education Television Network. They were trying to figure out how to use media in classrooms in ways that might make education broader, more democratic, more scalable, etc. The problem was, a lot of it turned into this. Look at what's on that screen. It's a TV show of a teacher doing work exactly like what's in the classroom. So it was not doing well. And what I'm arguing is that games may very well be at a very same moment. We have, in some ways, a failure of philanthropy. We have a blue ocean market that no one has actually been able to penetrate and monetize yet. Now, I know the idea of public anything right now is a political football, right? Both the left and the right, if you say public broadcasting or public media, want to actually dismantle the very things that we've created. So in some ways, you would think that might scare us off of doing this kind of building task. But I actually think the reason that this idea will not die in the game sector is that, in fact, many of the building blocks that we need to create something like a CPG are actually already in place in the market. So here's an array of the various entities, including DML, that are serving some of the internal purposes and functions that we would need in order to accomplish what the CPB actually did for television. My argument is that if you have these different groups and you stitch them together and you offer system support and you fill a few gaps that we have, and maybe even a little bit of leadership, you could actually end up possibly bundling together something like a corporation for public gaming and handing it to politicians in the last moment to sanction in ways that are smaller than, say, the original $9 million that went into CPB. You can end up creating a brand and actually creating market demand. I am convinced that if we could see some major wins in educational gaming, that it would actually create a desire in the market for more and more media of that form. So I want to quote David Rajewski on this. He ends his article in 2006 by saying, "Granted, it would take vision and courage to create such an entity, especially today, when the concept of public broadcasting has become politicized and compromised. But without such a commitment to serious games, we may find that in 20 years we have managed to create another vast wasteland out of a promising new mass medium. So this is my call to arms. What I'm asking is that we just go ahead and build it ourselves and get politicians to sanction it at the last moment anyway. Thank you.
Can all our speakers stand up so we can clap and hoot and howl for you? Nice! Nice job. Awesome work. So don't forget that on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. there'll be the second set of talks and also beer. So please go to that. Thank you all. That was amazing. I kept thinking about that beard detector, thinking that might be helpful. So now I would like to introduce David Theo Goldberg up to the stage here. And oh, I'm supposed to do something with the slides, right. I'm also a technician.
Great. Lightning strikes. Those were great talks. Thanks so much, everybody. Really terrific. You all know that, or many of you would know that the Mozilla Foundation has been a co-sponsor of DML for of the conference in particular for at least the last 3 years. They've been heavily involved in the Digital Media and Learning Initiative in a variety of ways, having to do in the past with hives. One can't go through a DML conference without mentioning open badging, and they've been absolutely germane to that initiative, and on and on. Mark Sermon, the CEO of the Mozilla Foundation, needs little introduction to this crowd. He is, how shall we say, ubiquitous, and he will be joining us now for something like a stealth announcement. So give it up for Mark Sermon.
Hello! It's not very stealth. I will announce a thing. So how many people are a little peckish? This little survey. How many people could use a drink? Excellent. So I can promise you that across the hall, there is drink, there is chorizo and charcuterie, there is domestic cheese, and imported cheese. So I will keep it short, because I've gone over there and there is a big spread over there. But what we've done, I think actually for the last 4 years with Haystack and David and the DML conference, is a science fair which really lets you get your hands dirty and hands-on with some of the kinds of things that we talk about and do in practice here. And to me, there is nothing more fun as a way to kick off into the end of the first day of DML than to actually just go play with staff, delight in it, see it, and have a drink and eat and talk to people. So that is what will happen next, and I will try to do everything I can to get you there quickly. But what I want to do first is just talk to you about something I'm very excited about, because it's been a twinkle in our eyes for a while in the badges part of the work we're doing, and that is to announce something called Badge Kit. And I'll talk about that in a second, but before that, I just want to give you a little bit of the context and unpack it. And my staff, who will know I'm going off script, will hate the fact that I'm going to weave a metaphor through all of this. So the metaphor is, because I think it really helps understand where we are in the era or the moment we are with badges, is email. And email to me is a really good example of something which, 25, 30 years ago, barely anybody used, and now, unlike me, is actually ubiquitous. And so just a little quick survey that I'll then weave a few things through my talk is, how many people here use email today? Awesome. I was right, it's ubiquitous. How many people were using email in 1985? Right. And so in a very short amount of time, something like email can really change our lives, our work, and our institutions. And I think that that is something that badges, as well as much of the other practice we have here in connected learning, can do. And so just to back it up, I think everybody here knows that learning doesn't just happen in school, despite the fact that that's sort of what learning means probably for most people on the street. That learning happens certainly in academic context, but it happens amongst friends, it happens at home, it happens in libraries, museums, other kinds of institutions. Learning happens in ways that really are social, about my passion, and really that's something that is especially enabled by the connected world, the world of the internet that we live in. But the credentialing system and the signaling system of what I might learn or where I might go learn something next isn't really reflect that. And so badges is an idea that people like Connie, Aaron Knight, others, Philip Schmidt, who I saw earlier, were starting to talk about 3-4 years ago as a way to address some of that, to take connected learning and make it real in a way that I could get signals, pathways, and credentials that recognize how I learned. And so, whether you love badges or hate badges, and I know DML has often people who feel both ways, it is an idea that I think many of us are exploring. And the beginning of that exploration really started with saying, how technically would we do that? And Mozilla and a number of others were involved in building something called the Open Badges Initiative, the Open OBI standard. And the OBI standard is basically just like an email. It's a standard that anybody can use to send something across the internet, send a credential. And email only works today as well as it does because there's a standard called SMTP. You can send email around the internet. But it wasn't always that way. People had to use that standard and then had to build on top of it. So one of the things that you've seen in the last few years, especially if you've been coming to DML for a while, is with Haystack in the lead, there was a DML competition on people using badges, and you had both proprietary software and open source software built on top of that standard. And that was a lot like, in many ways, the early days of email, where a few universities were connected to each other, but then you also had CompuServe and AOL. Some of them were using the standard, some of them weren't. You saw the concept, but it wasn't all adding up to something big yet. And what happened, I guess, last year in a couple of examples, one, the Chicago Summer of Learning, another Connected Educator Month with the Department of Education, we said, let's actually start building some software that'll make it easier for anybody to adopt this standard and pick up badges. And so you actually saw that Chicago Summer of Learning is a great example, where we built with others some open source software for issuing badges, for displaying badges that anyone could pick up and use. But what we realized was that wasn't enough just to put software out there. We really wanted badges to take off. We need software that really is easy to just grab and deploy in the same way you might grab Google Docs or WordPress or something like that. And so that's what we want to announce today in BadgeKit. BadgeKit is a collection of software that lets anybody adopt and set up and issue badges and plug it into their own site. It is open source, just like everything that Mozilla does. And it's something that you can extend, build on top of. The things that BadgeKit does for you are helps you design badges, helps you turn them into templates and adapt them, helps you create badges, does assessment and issuing for badges, and helps you build in milestones and leveling up and that sort of stuff. So all of that software, we really believe we want people to be able to pick up very quickly and run with. And so the thing that we're starting today is a public beta of that software in a hosted version, as I say, like a Google Docs or a WordPress.com, where people can just come and take that software and use it quickly, integrate it into their own website. That's starting in private beta now with 3 cities doing City of Learning projects as well, like the Chicago Summer of Learning last year. It's Chicago again, LA, and Dallas. Also using that private beta, I believe, will be Digital Promise, and then Mozilla's own projects related to Hive and digital literacy and WebMaker. So that's something that really with a click of a button and a very small amount of integration, people are going to be able to pull into their website. And by the later this year, anybody here can do that. If you want to do it, yourself right now, that software is also open source, and you can just download it, install it on your own servers. Although that's something that requires a fair bit of technical skill, which is the reason we're offering a kind of single-click hosted version of BadgeKit. Uh-oh, my notes are in an odd order. So I guess that's the main thing that I wanted to let people know is I'm excited to see BadgeKit coming out as something that really any of us could pick up and use very, very quickly by later this year. And why I brought that email metaphor in, other than that I do think we're at a tipping point with badges. We're sort of in about 1985 for email, where few people had heard of it. By the time you get to 1990, it's in Time magazine. By the time you get to the mid-90s, it's becoming mainstream, and to the point now where it's ubiquitous. It feels like we're at that spot with badges. If you were at the Reconnect Learning Summit a few weeks ago in Redwood City, you really felt that buzz, or you may even feel it here. But there are critical pieces of technology that came along in that era with email that helped that tip. So I don't know, how many people ever remember using Eudora? Not trivial number, many people younger than me. And what was important about Eudora was it was the first Windows, the first visual email client that you could just click and send email. And really we're hoping that BadgeKit, like Eudora, can be that thing where somebody installs it, plugs it into their website, goes to set up a set of badges and goes, oh, now I get what this is about, and it's not that hard. So I think that's what's going to happen, and I feel incredibly privileged to work with the team of people at Mozilla who are building it. So I just wanted to give you ask you to give a round of applause to the Badges team who have brought BadgeKit together. Woo! And while you will not have to use your own money for this, I encourage you to buy them a drink as you go and look at the BadgeKit table in the other room. So go in there, introduce yourself to the BadgeKit people. They're an amazing set of folks, and everybody else in the science fair, and let's have an awesome DML.